Welcome to Venture Media and Conversations with NILALEG. I am Sky, and in this episode we are sitting down with Regina Mwinga, the NILALEG Field Coordinator for the Zambezi landscape. Regina, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to our landscape.
Now, over the past 2 days, we've had the honor and privilege of visiting and covering several projects that you guys have implemented, from the bee project to the hammer milling operations, as well as some of the kettle programs engaging community members. Could you perhaps highlight why these projects were identified, what criteria were used for selecting both these projects, their locations, and the number of beneficiaries?
So the Zambezi landscape is composed of stakeholders that assist in the coordination of NILALEG activities. These are 3 community forests in Zilitenes, Kanjavuka, and Vukalo areas. And then also we have line ministries, which consist of tapis, rural water supply. It also consists of Directorate of Forestry. And then we also have, of course, conservancies or other community-based organizations like Sikunga Conservancy, Salambala Conservancy, and Lusesa Conservancy. So they all form this one big body that assists us in coordinating our activities on the ground. And these activities include restoration activities such as replanting and planting of trees, which consists of community support to our CBOs such as game guards and forest guards, training of line ministry stakeholders in different aspects of their coordination in the project. The project activities are subdivided in terms of livelihood needs and also based off of environmental needs of the project. The NILALEG project awarded small communities with grants, and the Skanjavuka Hammer Mill was one of those projects to which value addition was added to crops. And then you have activities like the Zambezi Livestock Scheme, to which we selected persons to be beneficiaries based on the criteria that they didn't earn more than 10,000 in a year, they were unemployed, or they met the criteria of they were already prior farmers prior to them receiving livestock. They were also in need, or they were female-headed households or people living with disabilities that needed basically cattle to assist in improving their livelihood or the breed of their cattle, to which they can acquire more consumption of milk or more meat for them to sell and have basically better crossbreeds, but that does not pertain to the normal Sangha breed cattle, which are small in size and do not give out enough milk quantities, so to say. So then these were selected based off livelihoods, how we could best assist people in the Zambezi. And you also find that cattle are important in that most of Zambezi farmers farm with cattle. The type of livestock they farm with is large stock such as cattle. So already them being farmers prior to them receiving livestock already put them at an advantage of, okay, they know the know-hows of how to look after cattle, vaccinate them, and basically the whole processes involved with livestock or animal husbandry rather. And then you also have projects like we visited the nutrient hotspot. Yes, or the fodder production plot, to which now these are NILALEG project objectives as to how we can restore the landscape itself and not have more land degradation come upon the already existing nature rangeland. So fodder production assisted us in the fodder production basically assists in alleviating the pressure off of the natural grazing land, whereby in more drier conditions or when cattle are in dire need of fodder, depending on where the farmer is, they can easily buy a bag of fodder, which is locally accessible to them as a farmer. So that's one of our landscape restoration activities. We also have nutrient hotspots, which also serve as a basis for farmers alleviating pressure on the land when it comes to grazing. And you'll find that the NILALEG project, on how it's designed on the Zambezi landscape, is that they picked a high, or the way it's demarcated in a high farming zone where farmers farm with cattle, crops, basically most of the subsistence farming in the whole region happens in this small stretch of the Zambezi landscape. And so we are piloting different activities to see which ones afford better grazing and which ones also mitigate the harsh outputs of climate change, and also then how we can better incorporate livelihoods in these projects to better people's lives.
So how many cattle beneficiaries were identified?
There were 12 cattle beneficiaries identified within the landscape through us using our community-based organizations, these be the TAs, the conservancies, and the community forests. They identified these people using our criteria.
Now, I understand that some beneficiaries received fodder or grass seeds to plant at their homesteads to supplement the cattle feed during droughts. Have there been any successes on these efforts?
Yes, the farmers were afforded with seeds or inputs for fodder for them to sort of cut and carry, plant smaller gardens of fodder seeds, which the project gave to them for cut and carry activities. And you find that for most of our 12 farmers, they were successful. But then they had pests such as goats or other type of stock coming in as soon as these plants would sprout and grow. And because of that, that hindered most of the replanting of the seeds that could have germinated and then the farmer harvests for the next season of drought. So it's really proving difficult to have the rotation of you plant, you harvest, and then you replant the seeds for the next time that your cattle are in need of these extra supplements of feed or fodder.
All right, now let us move on to the bee project and the beehives. So we came across these bee traps hung up in trees to capture migrating bees. Why are these traps located inland away from the river? Is it because that's where the community members are, or are there any other reasons? Because we've heard it's often too dry for bees to adapt to these traps and start producing honey. Is it a seasonal issue, or what happens if it doesn't rain next year?
The areas in which the bee traps are hung were selected by the community in that there needs to be an area where there's a trained beekeeper. For example, if they're successful in trapping one, you have a person that can identify that, yes, indeed the bee trap has worked, it's trapped so much bees. Because you find that bees are quite migratory, and as long as the queen bee doesn't settle anywhere, it's very difficult to even have a success on your particular bee trap having bees that have trapped bees successfully. So the community has now tried new areas to which they have then laid new traps, which is by the Kalimbeza side of the landscape. This is actually closer to the river, and so it's quite a moist area as compared to inland, where majority of the traps are and majority of the beekeepers that were trained are. So you have them going out once every 2 weeks, checking the bee traps that are closer to the Kalimbeza area, where we have the Zambezi Channel River coming in, because then it's very dry right now. The bees need moisture, they need somewhere cool. They also need somewhere they are able to move and also find pollen and what have you. So that's another strategy we've come to find, that the community themselves took it and embarked on it themselves, that they are now stretching out the bee traps far outland than they are inland. One of our beekeepers tried to elaborate that bees are actually migratory insects, and so then the success rate of you having a trap that has successfully trapped bees is quite slim, and that's why you have to have them hung up in selected sites on selected trees that probably have flowered and so forth. So they are now implementing, or they are now setting up trap boxes on the outside of the community forest, more outland than inland.
Very insightful. Now, Regina, could you tell us about the overall training programs for participants? I understand that some participants went to Livingstone to learn about beekeeping. Were there any other training opportunities offered to them or individuals involved in different projects?
We have trained a lot of our stakeholders. Even the livestock farmers themselves were trained by the bees on animal husbandry. We also have community forests, which were trained on sustainable forest management, at which also management plans and protocols were then explicitly written for their institutions. And then we've also had farmers trained on fodder production using bush material. We've also trained our line ministry stakeholders on capacity building, capacitating them with information on how to identify either projects or identify areas within the natural rangeland, to which they can then also assist community members have livelihoods attached to them, like for example identifying reed selling as a potential sustainable source of income for persons residing or individuals residing on the riverine systems of the Zambezi. We've also trained farmers, our identified farmers within the landscape on conservation agriculture. So these are basically new climate smart agricultural techniques they can then implement within their own fields or plowing areas, to which they then conduct their agricultural activities.
Now, some participants received fodder seeds to replant in their landscapes for self-sustenance. However, with persistent drought, how does NILALEG support these projects after they have been handed over to the communities, especially when there is no water and production halts?
This is where our stakeholders, our line ministry stakeholders come in, to which whereby once the project has ended, the line ministries can then take over in managing and assisting these communities with the need to which the line ministry can offer. For example, we have the Directorate of Water, Sanitation and Coordination, which has then assisted us in training community members on management of boreholes, water point committees, and so forth, so that during the drought season now, at least they have a one-way reporting, to which then the directorate themselves can assist the communities at ground level, whether it be with maintaining the boreholes, whether it be replacing some materials, and so forth. And we also have then Directorate of Forestry, which then works also with the community forests, whereby they undertake or partake forest management activities with the Directorate of Forestry, which be then that they also look into activities of managing wildfires, managing the rate at which forests are cut down for human consumption. We then also look at nursery management of indigenous trees, and also, of course, the vegetable side of the nursery themselves. And then we also have MEFT, Ministry of Environment, through the Directorate of Wildlife Services, which works with conservancies and game guides to basically undertake rangeland monitoring activities with the game guards that have been trained through the projects and so forth. So we really have our line ministries hands down, also such as Ministry of Agriculture under the Directorate of DAPIS, that then also assist in training farmers with climate smart agriculture, and also partaking other new innovative agricultural activities with our farmers, so that our farmers have a direct link to the line ministries that they say that to which they may need a particular help or particular niche-based activity under the project themselves, once the project has come to an end.
Now, with such a complex integrated system in the Zambezi region, what challenges does NILALEG face in implementing these projects?
The type of challenges we faced thus far is that we are using government officials, and therefore the constant need to always provide for their services on the ground and so forth, ad hoc to their already existing government activities. We've come to learn that it's not very sustainable for a project to always have those types of incentives for government employees. So we're then looking into either the line ministries themselves taking on this project as their own, so that it doesn't come off as an ad hoc or another type of project that isn't part and parcel of their mandate and work. Other challenges we faced was COVID during the inception of the project. For almost 2 years, the project came to a standstill, and so it became a bit difficult to actually even implement some of these projects, even to get go ahead from certain ministries and even have them to come on the ground with us proved a bit difficult for them due to the outbreak of COVID and so forth. And then later on, after COVID, you find that government ministries do not have the adequate resources to meet us in the ground when implementing activities. So this is where projects like NILALEG come in to at least assist to alleviate a bit of their challenges, such as transport, having them in the field with us constantly, having them partake in trainings and so forth. So those are some of the few challenges we faced working with line ministries. But other than that, we've had a good engagement with them. We've had a good build of repertoire with them and us, that if we go to their line ministry or offices asking for assistance, they prioritize us into giving us that service or assistance that the project may need.
Now, Regina, if you don't mind sharing, during your involvement in this project, what can you say have been some of your favorite success stories?
Yeah, so my favorite success stories would be the one where we have the woman who is managing her whole farm to produce fodder. That one really is empowering me, myself, being a woman, that a woman at her caliber, even at her age, can still do something for herself while she's retired and so forth. It's one of our best success stories because I think in the whole landscape, or in the whole region rather, she could be the only female now producing fodder at the scale that she's now producing. So it's a very good pilot, or it's a very good project to have, and to also show people that there's not only having one way to skin a cat, but can have many varieties of livelihoods that you can come up with, no matter the age gap, even the capableness of the person. So anyone can engage in that. So that should be one of my favorite success stories. And also the tree planting, to which you had Directorate of Forestry almost donate 500 bags or pot plants of trees. These were mixed trees. They were exotic mangoes, exotic guava tree species, but also the indigenous ones. And it was quite wonderful to have, because then you have the young ones that were interested in trees and tree planting, that then took some of this to their own homesteads and then replanted them for one of our restoration activities. So it was quite nice to have the young age groups join us for some of these restoration activities.
All right. Do you perhaps have any closing remarks before we close off?
Okay, some of the activities that have paved the way to us having more restoration activities would be then the fodder production using encroacher or invasive bush species. You find that in the Zambezi landscape where we are undertaking NILALEG project activities, you find that the area itself is quite dense and bushy. Animals cannot graze freely because these are mostly thorn bushes. So then it's quite difficult for even wildlife themselves to move through these wildlife corridors that they used to. So with this pilot bush to feed activity, we're hoping that in us thinning and then using the sort of larger woody materials for either droppers or woody fencing blocks and so forth, we're hoping that it could assist the youth in generating income, as it is quite labor intensive, but then also you find that it's assisting the environment to sort of breathe, as these places are quite dense and they are very huge thickets. So going forward, I'd like to see the project look more into landscape restoration, restoring nature rangelands that are now full of thickets, full of these encroacher invasive species of species that are deemed problematic for both community members and wildlife themselves. So it'd be really something to look forward to, that we can now produce fodder at a larger scale using encroacher bush species.
Thank you very much, Regina, for joining us. This has been Venture Media in Conversation with NILALEG. I am Sky. Until next time.